In our last video, we added code to use the NSXMLDocument class to extract information from the XML response we received from the Twitter API. In this video, we will continue this process and extract more information for the user. So instead of just logging the screen names, I'm going to remove all of this, and we're going to create an if statement. And here we're going to be checking for two things. We're going to see if, one, there was an error, and then we're going to use the logical OR statement, which is two upright bars. And here we're going to check and see if the screen names array has a count of 0, meaning that nothing was found. If either one of these statements are true, that means we did not find a screen name, so either there's an error or the Twitter site's down. Here we'll check for errors, so we're going to need an NS array, and I'll call it errors. And we're going to be searching the same root node, and we'll use nodes for XPath. And here we're going to use error, because that's the tag that we're going to be searching for. We'll put in nil, and we need to add a check to see if there are errors. And we're going to do this the same way. We're going to check its count, because now we're checking the array. If there are no error tags in this document, and yet there's no screen name either, then we're going to take this as the site's down, or there's no internet connection. And here we're going to need an NS string to hold the result, but we're going to have two of these. So I'm going to come up right before NSXMLDocument, and I'm going to create an NS string, and I'll just name it result. So we'll set the result here, and we'll set it equal to site down. And then if there was an error tag found, we'll report back what that error was. So then we'll set result to, and here we're going to need to talk to the errors, and we'll need to get its object at index. And the index we want to get is the 0th index, which is the first one, and we're going to get its string value. If you remember back in our last example, we logged screen names to the console, and it included the screen name tags on both sides of the text value. So here we just want to extract the string value without the tags. So in our first if statement here, we're checking to see if there's an error, and that's the error when it's creating the XML document, or we're checking to see if screen names is empty. Now if screen names is not empty, we're going to want to set the result to the user's name. So here we'll put in another else statement, and we'll set the result to the screen names, object at index, 0, and we'll grab its string value. And now we're done with all of our checks. So we'll come down, we'll release our XML document, and we'll log the result to the console. Well, I ran into a slight problem when I went to build, and that was due to the fact that I created a variable, but I didn't set it to nil. And it's always good programming practice to always initialize your variables, and this is a great example of that. I had originally said NSError star error, and that was all I had. I had not initialized that to nil. The problem comes in when sometimes where that pointer is pointing to, there's information there. So when we got down to if error, there was an error, but it wasn't an error you could read because it wasn't an NS error. It was just something in that memory location. So that's a good lesson to learn, and now we can move on. Now, just as a side note, you don't have to initialize every variable. The reason why this one causes a potential problem is because it may or may not have a value associated with it when we come down and check it in our if statement. Now, if we take NSString here, for example, our result variable, we're not doing anything with it until we are definitely setting it. So by the time it finishes this if statement here, this result will be set to a string value. Okay, so let's build and run. And I'll put in my credentials. And looking in the console, we can see that it printed out my username, which is AlanCraig_demo. The authenticated is being printed from our main controller. If you remember, we're returning yes from this method, so it's going to print out authenticated no matter what we do here. Let's do it again. And this time I'll put in credentials that won't pass. Hit return. And now we see in the console that it's saying could not authenticate you, and that's what we're expecting. Okay, so I turned off my internet connection, and we'll try it again and test out the site down. I'm putting in my correct credentials. And when I hit return, we can see that curl is printing an error to the console saying it couldn't resolve host twitter.com, but our code is returning site down. Now our application can determine if Twitter is down, if there is an error, and if the authentication was successful or not. Our next step is to relay this information to the user. Also, this method is getting a bit large and handling too many different things. On top of that, we are soon going to be posting tweets as well, and all of this code would need to be duplicated in another method to handle that posting. Let's refactor this code, and while we're at it, we'll put the NS task into its own class. This way we can also have another example of using a class method. First thing, we'll need to create a new class file and name it tmRunTask. Let's do that next.